Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rabbi Stephen, Rob Shmuel, yes, Rashbi. Hope you're doing well, and thank you for joining me on my weekly Torah portion. Okay, glasses on, glasses off. And I just got them. They're really great, like wearing them, so it is what it is. So there's a lot going on in the world right now, especially politically, which I am not going to comment on because I don't do that. And I don't really believe that it is the place of a rabbi to comment about politics. If for no other reason, then people in my congregation, people, I know some of you that are listening to me that are not part of my congregation, you have your opinions. And as far as I'm concerned, they're all valid. Unless, of course, it's extreme, and I haven't encountered that, which is good. But everybody's got a point of view, and there's a lot of validity to those points of view. I need to be accessible, as far as I'm concerned, to everybody. And in order to do that, people need to know that I'm listening, that I'm respecting them as a person, because you have an opinion, that's who you are, right? It's coming from who you are. So I think it's important that I don't intrude on that by telling you what I think. Now, I do comment, as a lot of you know, about certain spiritual issues that might be endemic or part of some political idea. Okay? Should we be positive about immigration? Yes. Should we allow criminals into our country? Absolutely not. That to me is a no-brainer. As far as all the other intricacies and all the issues surrounding that, I'm going to leave that up to the voting public, and I'm going to leave it up to our politicians. That's what their job is to do. That's what they're supposed to do, is to do that. I believe that politicians should have our best interests at heart, and I believe that politics should be a problem-solving venue. Certainly, people have their own agenda. I get that. But ultimately, you're working for the people. As a rabbi, that's what I, strive to do. I know that people look up to me because I am a spiritual leader, and for me, that's a big responsibility. So that's kind of the way I feel. And when I say politics, we know what's going on in Israel with Gaza today. We know that there's a lot of controversy as to what should be done. As a Jew, as a rabbi, as an American, as a person, as a human, I want to see everybody win. I want to see the bad guys get what they need to happen. If for no other reason, and this is part of Torah, if you let bad behavior go unchecked, it's just going to happen again. I know this from being in mental health. When I was working with adolescents and with certain adults, there's got to be consequences to what you do. Otherwise, what's the point, right? Okay, enough said about that. Let's talk about this upcoming week's Parsha. And Parsha is the Hebrew word for portion. And this is Yitro, otherwise known as Jethro. No, not the guy on the Beverly Hillbillies. I know I've been told my jokes are kind of dumb, but it is what it is. But Jethro was Choten Shel Moshe. He was Moses' father-in-law. And he had heard what had happened with the sea, how it had parted, how the Israelites were able to pass through, and how when the Egyptians tried to follow them, they were drowned. And he said, now I can see that Hashem is the true God. So he had that revelation. Jethro was a Midianite priest, and he was sort of a pagan. He was an idol worshiper. Of course, Moses lived with him with all that time, and maybe it just was never really an issue about God. But pagans do what? They worship forces of nature. They worship certain objects. The Egyptians, perfect example. They worshiped the Nile River because it gave them water, which allowed them to grow food. They worshiped the sun god. I think it was Ra, right? Because what does the sun do? It creates warmth and gives you all that great, not that I thought that they knew it, maybe they didn't know it at the time, vitamin D makes your bones strong, helps the plants grow, etc., etc. They worship animals, all sorts of stuff. But the revolution and the revelation that Abraham brought to the world was that there's one God that controls all of it, Hashem. That's what we call the name, okay? Because a name in Judaism isn't just who you are, it's what you are. It reflects your essence. And God's name, Yud-He Vav-He, which we don't pronounce, is a combination of the words Hayah, he was, Hoveh, he is, and Yeh will be, because God is eternal. Right? So Jethro now had that revelation. He was able to understand it. And the sages say that he kind of converted to Judaism. He was one of our earlier converts. And he went and met Moses and looks at Moses and says, this is great, but what are you doing here? You're sitting here and you got all these people behind you. What are you doing? And Moses says to him, well, I'm the prophet. I'm the direct communication to Hashem, to God. So I'm the one that people come to when they want to study Torah, when they want, they need help judging conflicts, whatever. Yes, I know Torah hasn't been given yet, but remember, Torah is God's teaching. It's been around forever. All Moses did was write it down, which we're getting to in this parsha. Jethro says to Moses, what you're doing is not good. It's going to wear you out. It's going to wear the people out. And at the end of the day, you're going to be too exhausted to adjudicate properly. So, delegate, Moses, delegate. You take all the hard stuff. The lesser important things, give to people that can judge thousands. To the lesser than that, judge of hundreds, judge 50s, judge 10s. And this was the basis of our judicial system. The Sanhedrin, which was the 70 elders. The lesser Sanhedrin, which is 23. And then the Beit Din, which is the court of 3. So Jethro recommended that Moses have specific criteria. He said that these people that are going to judge should be men of good character, not have enough money they can't be bribed, fair, etc. And Jethro says, and here's the stinger, you will teach them the laws. Now, what happens at the end of this portion? And you're wondering why I'm not coming to it. Okay, we get the 10 Commandments. Now, these are 10 of 613, right? But these are the big 10. Some student asked me once, and I thought this was a real astute question, especially for an 11 or 12-year-old, are those 10 Commandments the basis of everything else? And in my mind, the answer is yes, and I think a lot of sages would agree with that. They are the basis of all the other 613 commandments. Those 10. Very important. Critical, key. So, let's look at what the flow of the portion is. And those of you that have listened to me before know that the flow of Torah is one of my favorite ways to analyze things. Jethro says to Moses, you will teach them the laws. And then what happens? Moses goes up to Mount Sinai and gets the 10 Commandments, right? After this portion, we get Mishpatim, which is a slew of other commandments. So think about how this is going. Jethro's saying you need to teach them how to adjudicate, how to be good judges, how to sit there and advise people. There it is, right? Beautiful. And we're seeing how the flow of Torah goes. That it isn't just, they'll figure it out as they go along. You're going to teach them. Okay? And then we go right to the 10 Commandments. So for me, it's a big flow. You have Moses judging people, delegating, and we're starting the flow of learning God's law. Okay? Now, here's where I part company with some of our sages who say Moses was at fault. As the prophet, as the greatest prophet of all time, he was not doing service or justice to the people by delegating. I totally disagree. Totally. He's training people to, let's face it, be prophets themselves. When you're a judge, what are you doing? You're discussing, or I'll use a big word here, promulgating God's law. So, what better way to promulgate God's law is to be a teacher of God's law, and to be a good teacher, you need to be the ultimate student. And by understanding God's law and judging, you're using it and you're embedding yourself in Judaism. And then what's going to happen? Another generation is going to come up. So some of you are familiar with the way the Indians do it with the gurus and the disciples. Same thing, right? It's all one big thing. So that's my take on this week's portion. Now, one of my challenges as a rabbi is going to be able to read the Ten Commandments with the cantillation. It's a challenge I love. I will see you in services next Saturday. And once again, as always, thank you for listening.